Welcome to Moments with Marianne. This is your host, Marianne Pastana. And we're here today with special guest, Connie Zweig, who's here to share with us her new book, Meeting the Shadow on the Spiritual Path, the Dance of Darkness and Light in Our Search for Awakening. So is it possible to use shadow work to recover from spiritual abuse or betrayal? Well, today's guest is going to share with us just that. So Connie is a retired psychotherapist and a former executive editor. She is the co-author of Meet the Shadow and Romancing the Shadow, and author of the bestseller, The Inner Work of Age. She has been practicing and teaching meditation for more than 50 years. So let's welcome to the show, Connie Zweig.
Hi, Marianne. Thanks so much for the opportunity.
What an honor it is to have you here and to talk about this book. What inspired you to write this?
Oh, a few different things. I've had this long career writing about the shadow, which is our personal unconscious, that part of us where we store all the unacceptable and forbidden and unwelcome thoughts and feelings and activities. And I've written about this in relationships and in politics and in aging. And I hadn't written about it in the religious or spiritual world. And I couldn't really find any books about it from that perspective. So it felt like an important contribution for me to make. And I've also had my own personal experience of leaving a spiritual community because of a lot of red flags. And I wanted to interview other people and kind of study that and apply psychology to that to see what we could understand about our attraction to charismatic teachers, what we give up to them, what we gain from them, what we struggle with in religious community, and how we can separate if we need to.
Is there a practice that this book is rooted in?
Well, my the things that I've taught mostly in my career and my private practice have been meditation and shadow work. So shadow work is a particular method for working with unconscious material. And the second half of this book is about how to recognize spiritual shadow and how to recognize projection onto teachers and reclaim for ourselves some of the independent thinking, authentic feeling, intuition, bodily awareness, and agency that we may have given up to another person.
I like how in your book you talk about how it's really this time's a call for shadow awareness. And I think for a lot of listeners who may be new to the shadow process, they're just thinking, oh, that's the part of me that I don't like, or that gets angry sometimes. Is there a broader discussion for that?
Well, absolutely anything can be repressed or buried in the shadow. So when we're growing up, if our families didn't like our artistic talent and they thought it was trivial, or our athletic gifts because, it wasn't academic performance, or our passion, then those positive qualities can also be buried in the shadow. And at some point, we might want to explore them and reclaim them and learn self-expression to be able to live them out more now. And so I examine that in the context of our spiritual lives. How do we create a spiritual persona to get love and approval by a teacher or clergy person, just as we did in childhood from our parents? And how does that spiritual persona require sacrifices from us? Yesterday, I spoke with an Episcopal priest who told me that he's so deeply identified with his role as a priest that now that he's retired, he doesn't know who he is anymore. And he's starting to realize how many parts of himself were buried in the shadow in order to carry that role for other people.
That really does bring up a lot of different questions, especially when you look at what is because a lot of people are having to redefine what it means to be them, what their life is really about, and maybe going deeper and moving beyond the job now.
Well, certainly that happens at midlife. Most people have some kind of identity crisis. I can see that happening in my son-in-law right now at 44. He's doesn't know it, but he's asking that question, who am I beyond work and beyond my role at work and beyond my role as a husband and father? Who am I underneath those roles? And then it comes up again in late life, often with retirement, when people release those roles that they've carried for so long. And it could be work roles or parent roles or spouse roles. What happens? Who am I if I'm not that husband or that CEO, that therapist or that teacher? Who am I underneath those roles? And so there are times in our lives when the boundaries sort of come down and that question emerges. And for some people, this is a time when the shadow erupts. We've all seen people in midlife who kind of burn down their lives. They either start spending a lot of money, or they leave their marriages, or they quit their jobs. And that's because the unlived life in the shadow, the unexpressed talents and feelings and thoughts are moving forward into awareness. And sometimes that can create regret or disorientation. And so people make difficult choices during those times.
Is there something that people are really longing for right now?
Well, let's relate what we were just saying to the religious or spiritual domain. So if you step into a role as a clergy person or teacher, or as a disciple, a student, an acolyte, and you really deeply identify with that role, let's say as a student or believer, and you live that out for many decades, and at a certain point you start to question it, then that who am I sense will come back again. And you'll begin to wonder, what did I lose in the shadow by living out this limited role for so long? Where is my authentic anger or grief? Where is my connection to my body, which was shamed in this tradition? And so that role begins to crack, and the relationship to the teacher begins to be questioned. I think people are longing. It's a very generalized question to ask, because I do think there are sort of tribes now in our culture, lots of communities that are siloed off from each other and are longing for different things. Some people are primarily longing to belong. And that need to belong keeps them very identified with the group and with groupthink. And so it feels dangerous to question what they're being taught or what other people believe or what the teacher or clergy person is teaching them, because their basic longing is to belong. Other people long to be seen. They want to make their contribution and be seen for it. Other people long to feel special. And that also can keep people enmeshed in communities long past time, even if there's some kind of abuse going on, they're told that they're special, that they're the special member who's experiencing this. It could be sex, or it could be some kind of intimacy with a teacher or clergy person. And their longing for that specialness keeps them there. In a broader sense, Marianne, I believe there's a longing in the human soul to move beyond ego, to experience what we might call the divine or transcendence or spirit or non-duality. There's a lot of different language for this, but for people who feel connected to this yearning, it's a kind of restlessness that keeps us searching, keeps us seeking. And that longing, I think, is very widespread now, and we can see it in the growth of religious and spiritual communities.
With everything that's happening now, we're in such an amazing time in history where we've got devices, they can pick up anything, but at the same time, they seem to explain away maybe miraculous things that happen or different types of kind of just connections with God that we would have. How do we look at that in a new light?
Well, the gift of technology, I think, is connection, right? So if you're interested in spirituality, you can go online and Google, and you can see hundreds and hundreds of people being interviewed about their spiritual experiences. At the same time, I took a walk this morning, and every person I saw walking was staring at a phone while they walked. And this is very disturbing to me because they're not connecting to their bodies. They're not seeing the beauty in the natural environment. They're not connecting to the people next to them or speaking to other people. So the devices offer great opportunities, and they also have a shadow side. And I think we're seeing that in many ways with the discussion now in AI, but also in our kids. My grandkids slept over this week, and the 11-year-old boy won't put down his laptop. I mean, he won't put it down. He'll talk to you while he's playing a game, or he watches YouTube a lot. So he might play with his sister while he's watching YouTube, but he's addicted to his device at 11 years old. So, there are profound shadow issues. I don't know how we're going to deal with them collectively. I think that every family is struggling with this differently. Some parents are limiting time for their kids online. Other parents are letting technology babysit their kids. And, it's just going to unfold. We'll see what happens.
Well, on that note, we're going to pause here for a quick break. We've been speaking with Connie Zweig in regards to her new book, Meeting the Shadow on the Spiritual Path. We'll be right back after these messages from our sponsors.
The first thing you need to know about me is that I love my kids, but they are not my everything. They used to be, but that's when my entire life fell apart. In order to pick back up the pieces, I had to put the love I have for myself before everything else, including my kids. I'm Jessica Dennehy, and I own multiple businesses. I'm a best-selling author, and I have all the strategies that I've used to make my life what it is today. And I'm going to teach you how to do them in my new book, Selfish is a Superpower. So go get your copy today on Barnes & Noble or jessicadennehy.com.
Announcing a revolutionary tool for wellness. Scalar Light has the ability to enhance and harmonize your own bioenergies. With Scalar Light, you can get started in just minutes and begin feeling better the very next day. Scalar Light is a remote energy that gently and subtly works with your own body's bioenergies, increases pro-cellular wellness, and enhances your body's immunity.
Experience the benefits of Scalar Light. Try a complimentary 15-day experience at scalarlight.com.
Are you ready to celebrate World Wellness Weekend on September 15, 16, and 17? Well, we are. 6,000 venues in 147 countries are organizing fun and free activities for you to enjoy with your friends, your family, your colleagues. Look on wellmap.org, WELLMAP.
In your hands lie ancestral patterns. These patterns shape how you think, what you struggle with, and experiences you love, your life pattern. We're going into the latest neuroscience of biological hand analysis, a realm beyond palmistry where science and the soul entwine. Hand analysis is the latest method to transform lifelong patterns. I am Master Hand Analyst Brent Bruning. Join us and visit thepowerinyourhands.com.
Looking for a page turner? Cozy up to a fantasy adventure romance trilogy with The Girl in the Toile Wallpaper by Mary Kay Savarese. The second novel in the Star Writers trilogy, The Star Writers Club, is coming soon. Take the journey. Connect with Mary at www.maryksavarese.com. Her books are available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie bookstores.
With Breath Hub, you'll experience the transformative power of breath as it harmonizes your body, mind, and spirit. Recommended by experts in fitness, sports, psychology, and medicine. Meet the scientific way of being well. Breath Hub. Breathe better, live better.
The book Terminal Cancer is a Misdiagnosis, authored by Danny Carroll, is on sale at Amazon now. Licensed psychologist and psychotherapist Tessa Antia-John-Guerra commented, "This is one of the most empowering books on a topic of cancer you will ever read." Award-winning author T.L. Needham commented, "This recommended book can be understood by anyone seeking answers, hope, and alternatives to a terminal diagnosis. Buy it now on Amazon.com.
Pandemonium. Fast forward 20 years. A U.S. president seizes control of all U.S. missiles, the power grid, the banking system, and every computer in America as he hides in an underground bunker. Pandemonium, a captivating sci-fi thriller where a hidden war, psychics, aliens, artificial intelligence, and transcendental love collide with the latest media technology. Pandemonium, live to all devices. Get your copy on paperback or digital. Free sample at getpsychic.org.
I'd like to thank Jason Eastwood at Guitarfulness for sharing his inspiring music and talent with us. His music is known worldwide for cultivating atmospheres of harmony, inner peace, and clarity. Visit Jason's website at guitarfulness.com. Join his newsletter, be part of his community, and download his music. Welcome back to Moments with Marianne. We're here today with special guest, Connie Zweig, who's here to share with us her new book, Meeting the Shadow on the Spiritual Path. In your book, you talk about how people long for this romantic connection. And a lot of times we hear people saying they're waiting for their true partner or twin flame, however that's identified. How does that longing and being in that place keep us stuck?
So the spiritual longing that we were talking about before can be projected or unconsciously attributed to many different things. It can be, the divine can be attributed to money. And so if we project that longing onto money because we think that's our savior, that's the Holy Grail, then we get caught in materialism and consumerism and end up feeling empty, even with a private jet. Or if we attribute it to a teacher who maybe has undeveloped empathy or has authoritarian tendencies or doesn't have good moral development, then we end up in what should be a sacred relationship, longing for union and recognition and transcendence with someone who may be abusive, may abuse power or sex or money, and may control the people in his community or her community. So, we can attribute the source of our longing outside of ourselves and really get in trouble. So you asked about romantic love. I think many people have unmet childhood needs. And one of them is to merge with a powerful person who will keep us feeling safe from abandonment. So if we project that, if a woman projects that onto a man, this man is strong and he's safe and he'll protect me. And she's in that relationship and then he becomes abusive. The longing has led her to a situation where she's attached to the wrong object. Her projection is keeping her trapped in a dangerous situation. So this longing, I call it our holy longing. It can lead us to glorious, spiritual, transcendent experiences, and it can lead us to spiritual abuse, romantic abuse, financial emptiness, and all kinds of discomfort and trauma. So my work is about teaching people shadow awareness. How do you recognize what's motivating you from your own shadow? And how do you discern that in other people, your partners and your teachers? How do you discern the red flags? And if you see them, when do you decide to act on them? When do you become a whistleblower? Or when do you leave a partner or a teacher? When do you decide to separate from your religious community? I remember when President Jimmy Carter left the Southern Baptist Convention after a lifetime in that church because of their sexism. And he was very public about it. And yet this week, that church came out again that they wanted to move all women out of leadership positions. So when you see that kind of blindness in a huge religious community, maybe that you've participated in all your life, how do you respond? Do you deny its importance? Do you struggle to accept the beliefs that you're being told? Do you leave and try to find another church? Or do you stay and try to work within the system to change it? So these are the kinds of responses I explored in the book, because this is very individual and I'm not telling people what to do. This is not a book about cults, you know, they're all bad and then you go back to conventional life. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there is great beauty and value in religious and spiritual teachings, in the transmissions from teachers, in the practices in every denomination. And at the same time, there are shadow issues in every denomination. And chapter 5 goes through a long list of scandals that are current now to tell people that this is what these teachers are doing. These are the kinds of abuses that are happening now. And if you are in one of those communities, how do you break through denial and act on your own behalf? Or how do you become a whistleblower and act on other people's behalf? So those are some of the issues in the book.
Well, I'd also think that moving from a place of being spiritually naive to a place where you become spiritually mature, you understand, hey, I have boundaries. You know, there are some things that are unacceptable no matter what. And being able to make that discernment going, okay, I need to either move forward and do something different or continue on the path I'm on in a different way.
Yes, that's right. And so discernment allows us to move from spiritual childhood or naivete, when we have blind faith in clergy and teachers, through some kind of meeting with the shadow, toward spiritual maturity, in which we can engage with discernment. We can make choices more consciously because our own shadows are not locked into denial and early childhood needs. And so it's a very different way of engaging our religious and spiritual lives. I read yesterday in the New York Times that there's a huge trend now out of religion. Millions of people are leaving, becoming what they call unchurched. And they don't know where to go. And so often what happens is they close down their longing and they give up. And that loss of faith can help them for a while to readjust and prioritize other things. But eventually, for many people, the longing resurfaces and they want to find a different direction, a different orientation for their inner lives and for their connection to the divine. So this book is for them. This book is for people who have lost faith, who have become disillusioned, who want some kind of guidance to sort it out and to gain clarity about what they gained in the community and what they gave up in order to belong, and what's next for them. You know, who am I now? And what do I need now after this experience? And how can I discover that?
For those that have had maybe a bad experience, you know, with either a spiritual teacher at the church, you name it, how can they move beyond that? That sometimes seems like it's such a difficult thing to move beyond.
Well, it can be very painful. You know, it ranges from very subtle, careless abuse to extremely traumatic with consequences of PTSD, nightmares, anxiety, insomnia, and so on, and loss of faith. And so depending on the impact on an individual person, they may need, you know, different kinds of treatment. You know, some people will need therapy for trauma and healing. And some people can just talk to a good friend and get clarity about it and move on. So it depends on what's happened. And that in turn depends on how deeply they were identified with the beliefs and the community and the leader. So if there was deep identification, people often feel duped and they can get angry, they can become depressed and so on. And so then they need support. They need help in understanding how this happened and who they are now. And so that's in the second half of the book, about how to reclaim the parts of the self that we lost in these communities.
Where do you think people get hung up as they move through their shadow?
I'm not sure what that means, but, you know, typically our first response to meet a part of ourselves, let's say our anger or our judgment or our criticalness or our addictions, the first response is denial. You know, I said that, but it's not me. It's not who I am. I'll never say it again. Or I did that once, but I don't need it. I won't do it again. So that's the first defense, is we deny that it's important and we deny accountability for it. If it continues to happen, at some point, we may be able to self-reflect and say, okay, I need to work on that. And that's an important moment in a person's life. That's a moment when a person may seek out a therapist or a spiritual counselor, or even a peer counseling situation, to be able to get some mirroring and some guidance about why this is happening. Why are those critical comments in your relationship with the person you love always coming up? Why are you doing that? And then they may be able to uncover the hidden purpose of the critic, the shadow character that I call the critic. Because each of these parts of us does have a hidden, a valid purpose, a valid meaning, but we need help to discover what that is. And then that in turn allows us not to act it out unconsciously and harmfully with others, or self-destructively with ourselves.
In your book, you talk about how, in many ways, our spiritual practice may have us kind of narrowing our feelings. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that.
Well, I think that there are many teachers and communities across the denominations that encourage us to create a spiritual persona. You know, look happy so other people will want to join. Or, you know, hide your sexuality because it's really shameful. Or your anger is not appropriate. We don't want to see it here. Or your grief, your sadness is not okay. We can't deal with it. And so people adapt to those messages by narrowing their range of emotion. And they don't even realize that it's happening. It's not a conscious process. I say to myself, okay, I can't get angry if I want to belong here. It really happens unconsciously. And so the full range of authentic feelings that are available to us gets stuffed. And it lives in the unconscious shadow, and it builds up charge there. And every once in a while, it erupts. So maybe it erupts in a lie, or it erupts in an affair, or it erupts in some kind of ethical lapse. And that gives us an insight into our relationship with the shadow. In that moment, we're meeting a shadow in ourselves. In that moment, we become conscious of what was unconscious before. And so if it's a buried feeling, it may be really uncomfortable to experience it. But we can stop and we can reflect on, do I want to live with such a narrow range of feeling? Is that okay for me? Do I want to live with this message of the sensations in my body are bad and evil and my body's functions are shameful? Do I want to accept that and live with that for the rest of my life? And so we can begin to question some of the beliefs and teachings that we're being given and slowly, slowly open our own repertoire of possibilities. And I want to open an invitation to our listeners, Marianne. I'm forming free online support groups for people who have experienced religious abuse or spiritual disillusionment and want to read this book together and do spiritual shadow work together in small groups online. And so if that's of interest to you, you can shoot me an email, Connie, Connie, Zweig, Zweig, @gmail.com. Please put spiritual shadow work in the subject line and be sure to give me your time zone. And I will connect you with other people in your time zone to read the book together. Please don't send me a long story. I get way too many emails, but I would be happy to connect you to a group if this is of interest to you and you'd like to do it in community.
What an empowering experience that would be. Well, Connie, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the show with us here today.
I'm so grateful, Marianne.
Well, thank you, Connie. It has been such an honor to spend this time with you and to talk about your new book, Meeting the Shadow on the Spiritual Path, the dance of darkness and light in our search for awakening. Meeting the Shadow on the Spiritual Path is available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and all indie retailers. And remember, support our indie bookstores. If you don't see it on the shelf, just ask for them to order it. Well, we're at the end of our time today. I'd like to thank everyone for tuning in. You've been listening to Moments with Marianne, where we make every moment count.
In a single moment, your life can change. Moments with Marianne is a transformative hour that covers an endless array of topics with the best of the best. Her guests are leaders in their fields, ranging from inspirational authors, top industry leaders, and business and spiritual entrepreneurs. Each guest is gifted and a true visionary, a recognized leader in her own work, and while teaching others to develop, refocus, and grow, Marianne will bring the best guest and sometimes a special surprise. Don't miss this. You never know just which moment will change your life forever. Make sure to tune in and visit momentswithmarianne.com for more information.